Isn't it time to get away, to jump in, to tee up, to get out and explore, to stay in and indulge, to feel the inspiration of wide open spaces? Whenever you're ready for a getaway, Palm Desert is where you'll be able to do it all, safely. Find your happy pace in Palm Desert.
Hi, I'm Tally Fantini with Palm Springs Life. Welcome to Palm Desert Food and Wine, brought to you by the City of Palm Desert. Today we kick off the series with Afrim Pristine and the art of wine and cheese pairing. We're very excited to have Affrum with us today, who recently has a show on the Canadian Food Network and soon to have a show on the American Food Network in January. Affrum will join us in person at the Palm Desert Food and Wine Festival March 25th through March 27th in 2022. We're excited to see you all there. We're excited to have Affrum there in person, but in the meantime, we're so happy to be working on wine and food pairings with Affrum. Before we get started, we want to thank our grocery partner, Jensen's, for working with us to locally provide the ingredients for Palm Desert Food and Wine Experience. If you have questions today, please put them in the chat and Affrum will answer them as we go. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with Afrim Pristine and the art of wine and cheese pairing. Affrum?
A little bit of background on who I am. First name Affrum, last name Pristine. I'm from the Cheese Boutique in Toronto. And my family has had something called the Cheese Boutique for 51 years. Actually, we just celebrated our 51st year of business, which I'm very proud to say, knock on wood. And my family came to Toronto and came to Canada as immigrants. A lot like many North Americans. I know a lot of Canadians who have done that. And Toronto in particular opened up its arms to my family. And my mother taught Latin at the University of Naples. My father was studying political science at the University of Naples. That's how they met. They have no cheese background. They have no food background whatsoever. The only thing they knew about cheese, my parents, was that they liked to eat it. They come from European backgrounds. I mean, big European culture is cheese. It's in every diet, no matter where you go in Europe, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, they're eating some sort of cheese. God bless them over there in Europe. I think here in North America, too, we've actually adopted that theory. We love cheese. We love it. And my family came over here and they opened up something called the Cheese Boutique, because in the part of Toronto where they moved, first immigrated to, there was no cheese shop. And there was a butcher, there was a baker, there was a shoemaker, there was a hairdresser. There was a little bit of everything. And it was a very European feel to the neighborhood, very Eastern European feel, actually. So they opened up, because they got a lease, they got a 500 square foot lease. They opened up something called the Cheese Boutique because there was a cheese shop needed in that neighborhood. People always ask me, I've been doing this myself for 25 years. So people always ask me, when did your passion for cheese start? And I always say it kind of started before I was alive. Cheese provided for my family. Cheese put food on my table for my family. For me, cheese gave me every opportunity to do anything in life. And for me, it's now many years into doing this. All I want to do is show people the passion that I have and show people the respect that I have for my favorite ingredient, which is cheese. It gave me everything. I owe everything I have to that beautiful, funky, artful ingredient that we all love. I have a national best-selling cookbook that came out in 2018. And oddly enough, I have a cheese-focused travel show called Cheese: A Love Story on the Food Network, which has been airing for the last 6 weeks. And literally right now, it started at 8 p.m. is the final episode. I'm missing it for you guys. It's okay. As long as it's cheese related, I don't mind. I got it taped. I'll watch it later. But oddly enough, what are the odds? Palm Desert. Good call. Good timing. Good timing. Anywho, okay, so we're going to get into cheese. We're going to get into wine. I have a whole bunch. I hope you guys have some cheese in front of you as well. I picked kind of 5 of my favorite cheeses at the moment because that always changes for me. I have access to 600 of the best cheeses on the planet. To pick 5 is very difficult, but I did that. Okay, pairing cheese and wine. I think, look, I'm the cheese guy. So first, cheese always steals the show. But this is the thing with cheese and wine is I can't come home after a long day at work and just have a piece of cheese. I can't. Vice versa. I can't come home after a long day at work and just have a glass of wine. I can't. I need the two together. Cheese and wine are, in my opinion, the perfect marriage of alcohol and food that there is. Why? Because they live a similar life, okay? They live a similar evolution. Cheese is made with 2 ingredients. No matter what cheese you have, it's made with 2 ingredients, milk and salt. That's it. Wine is made with grapes. They're simple, noble, humble ingredients. They're terroir driven, okay? If a wine tastes like black licorice and gooseberry, these aren't ingredients that are added into the grapes for that wine to taste like it does and take the notes of gooseberry and black licorice. It doesn't work that way. It's grapes from a certain part of the world, made by a man, woman, someone very talented for it to taste the way it does. And when it ages, it evolves and evolves and evolves and it becomes something different. Cheese is exactly the same thing. It's made with milk and salt. It's terroir driven, where the animals, what the animals are feeding off in certain parts of the world, their ancestors, so the animals' ancestors, the grapes, vines, like these are all very kind of similar things that evolve in a natural, organic way. Cheese and wine, honestly, what is better than that? When starting off with a cheese board, okay, we're gonna make a wicked cheese board here, people. I got two cameras here. You can kind of toggle back and forth, toggle from me and then toggle from my cheese board here, okay? When making a cheese board, I like odd numbers. I'm an odd guy, so I like odd numbers. I like 3, 5, or 7. And I like hitting all the different cheese families. I think it's really, really important to kind of showcase a creamy, a blue, a firm, a soft, a goat, a sheep. Like, variety is the spice of life, but it's also the spice of cheese. I don't know that I never said that before. I think it came out okay. But variety is a big part of cheese. It's the best part about cheese, is going to a cheese store and just discovering all these amazing flavors and textures. If you love cheddar, phenomenal. Expand your horizon. Go trust your cheesemonger. 2 people in life to trust with your life. Your mechanic, get to know your mechanic, and your cheesemonger, get to know your cheesemonger. 2 very important people. They'll never steer you wrong as long as you trust them and they trust you. When starting off making a cheese board, I got 5 cheeses here. This is one from Ontario called Belhaven Brie. I'm from Ontario. I love, Canada makes world-class cheese, US as well. And I think we're both in our very infancy stages of making cheese. Europe has hundreds and hundreds of years of experience. We may not have that experience and tradition, but we do have that excitement. And that's the kind of most important part. So we're starting off in Ontario with a simple, mild cow's milk brie called Belhaven Brie. I cut it in half. And this is kind of something, to be honest, I always have in my fridge. It's not like a French triple cream, which is just going to kind of run off the table. It's a lovely cheese as well. This is a little meatier, right? Like it's just it's got a little bit of like sponge consistency. It's meaty, it's creamy, it's 55% milk fat. It's fairly mild. It's got a very, very thin rind. We're going to talk about rinds today too. That rind, yeah, Alex, you want to come down here? That rind is 100% edible. People always ask me, Afrim, can I eat this rind? To answer that generally, I mean, as long as it's not wax, 100% you can eat rinds. Not only can you eat them, I think you should eat them. It's part of the whole integrity of the cheese. A rind, when properly matured, isn't going to taste funky, isn't going to taste like, a dirty gym bag. It shouldn't. When taken care of, when the cheese is taken care of, that's perfect. The inside of the cheese is rich, fatty, creamy, like a good Ontario triple cream should be. Then there's that very thin layer of rind. It's actually going to add a different texture to the cheese. It's actually going to add a little bit of pleasant bitterness to the cheese. Lovely, mild, creamy. I love the versatility of this cheese. You can slice like a youthful brie like this, and it is quite youthful. It's only about 60 days. You can slice a cheese like this, put in a grilled cheese sandwich with like an apple jam or an apple jelly or something. It's lovely, fantastic. From Ontario, Belhaven Triple Cream Brie. What wine do I want to pair with it? We're starting off, let's go to the cheese for a second. So we're going mildest to strongest, all right? I'm doing my best. I have 5 cheeses. The next 4 are kind of all pretty kind of big, bold, sharp flavors. But again, I'm trying to stay mildest to strongest. We have a blue cheese. I don't want to go to the blue cheese next. If I go to the blue cheese next, we won't taste the rest of the cheese. So mildest to strongest. Do the same with your wines. We don't want to start with a big, bold, jammy Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon right now with the brie. We want to start off with something light, something crisp, something acidic. A Sauvignon Blanc. I have a Sauvignon Blanc here. I have 6 wines here. I'm going to open up all of them tonight, I swear. Sauvignon Blanc, crisp, acidic, fresh tasting. A rosé, amazing in the summer. And again, has that kind of fresh acidity. Cheese is fat, especially something like this, which is really, really full fat triple cream. You want acid. You want a high acidic wine to cut through the richness of that cheese. We're going to go on to the next cheese because it's kind of similar, a little different at the same time. Oh my God, this is beautiful. I've left this out all day. And you know, with cheese, the longer the better. 2, 3, 4, 5 hours. God bless you. 12 hours, you're a pro if you're leaving cheese out of the fridge for 12 hours before you're eating it. So from actually the same dairy in Ontario, Quality Cheese Company in Vaughan, Ontario, like the first one, this is goat. Smell your cheese, people. God bless me with a nose like this. So I smell like a Wolverine. And I smell every cheese before I eat it. It's very important because you start to understand what it's going to taste like. You start to understand what, you know, it's going to feel like on your palate. Goat's milk already very different than cow. Now we're getting into some of the heavier dutier cheeses. This is funky, earthy, acidic, a little sour. It's got a really interesting flavor profile. What's very cool, this is like 3 cheeses in one. When you get, it's called Ashley goat's milk cheese. Excuse me, I didn't say that. It's ash covered as well. We're going to talk about that. But look at this cheese. Go to your cheesemonger in California. Okay, the birthplace of the Palm Desert show that I'm going to go to next March. They make Humboldt Fog, very iconic cheese made at Cypress Grove Dairy. This cheese is actually very similar to that. Goat's milk. 3 cheeses in one. The rind, the inside of the rind, and the inside of the inside of the rind. 3 different cheeses, 3 different textures, 3 different flavor profiles. Start from the outside is the rind. Again, we're talking about rinds. The rind is going to be pleasantly bitter. Pleasantly. It's going to have like a little bit of a bite to it, like texturally. Then the inside of that rind, the cream, that's going to be the funk. That's going to be like the funky, aromatic, like, you know, slap you in the face, but in the best kind of way, cream. Then the inside of that is that quintessential goat's milk cheese. It's lush, it's creamy, it's fairly mild, it's slightly sour, it's slightly acidic. The cool part, this is aging at its best, people. Cheeses age from outside and in. They absorb like a sponge. They absorb moisture. This sits in an environment where it's very humid, it's very wet. This cheese absorbs that moisture like a sponge. That's where the creaminess comes in. This is about 90 days old, okay, properly cured. If we were to age this further, another 90 days, that cream texture would keep permeating in and in and in. It's a very, very cool thing. Look at this thing. I can barely even handle it anymore. It's like starting to run off the table. Oh my God, it's amazing. Honestly, goat's milk cheese. And if you have, we talked about Sauvignon Blanc, amazing. For me, goat's milk cheese and a crisp, acidic, fresh white wine, a crisp Riesling, and goat's milk cheese like this, in my opinion, it's the best wine and cheese pairing you can get. It's like just perfect. Where the birthplace of this cheese is the Loire Valley. Loire Valley in France is home to goat's milk cheese like this. Many other goat's milk cheeses made around the world are resembling or trying to emulate a Loire Valley goat's milk cheese. What else is famous from the Loire Valley? Chenin Blanc, Sancerre wine, Sauvignon Blanc, those crisp, acidic white wines. What's the phrase? Where it grows, it goes, or where it goes, it grows. It's something like that. You can Google it. Believe me, it's something like that. This cheese is made in the town where white wine is made. They need to go together. I'll tell you what a trick is that you know when you have a perfect wine and cheese pair. You first always start off with the cheese. I'm the cheese guy. Always got to start off with the cheese. You consume the cheese. Just like take it down, enjoy it, digest it physically, digest it mentally. Just understand the flavor profiles. Then you consume the wine. When you get the cheese flavor back after you've consumed the wine, you have a perfect wine and cheese pairing. Perfect. Ashley Goat, I pair it with the Sauvignon Blanc or Riesling. I'm a big Riesling guy. I actually looked for Riesling on my wine wall. I have a very nice wine wall. I can't find a Riesling. Alex, show the wine wall. I have a nice wine wall. I like good wine. I cannot find a Riesling. I'm on with Sauvignon Blanc. It's okay, everybody. There's no wrong answer. There's no wrong answer. Okay. Triple cream, goat cheese. Lovely. Now we're starting to get into the heavier, dutier cheeses, everybody. And if we get into the heavier, dutier cheeses, we get into the heavier, dutier wines. Are there no questions, Alex?
Not so far.
Am I doing that good of a job? It's impossible. I can't be that good.
Chime in anytime, people.
Yeah, please. Questions. Go for it. We'll do a Q&A at the end as well. Okay. I'm going to go to some bigger, bolder cheeses now. We're going to Tuscany. Now we're going to travel a little bit with the world of cheese, okay? So this is a classic Tuscan pecorino. Classic. Pecorino, what does that mean? This is the 3/4 Italian coming out of me. I'm like 64% Italian, everybody. That number goes up and down as I do these virtual classes. But today it's 64%. It's from Tuscany. Pecora, pecorino, okay? Pecora means sheep. Pecorino means baby sheep. This is a classic Tuscan pecorino. People come into my cheese shop and they say, Afrim, I want a pecorino. When you say that, it's like going into a car dealership and saying you want a car. What kind of car do you want? What kind of pecorino do you want? I can show you 35 pecorinos that we have at the Cheese Boutique at my store. Many cheese stores, they'll have multiple different kinds of pecorino. That's kind of the cool part about it. All over Italy are they making different styles of sheep's milk cheese, which is what a pecorino is. It's kind of cool. I went to the birthplace, okay? Depends who you ask in Italy, actually. But I went to Tuscany, okay? One of the birthplaces of pecorino in Italy. Smell it. Like you smell a Tuscan pecorino, it's pleasantly offensive, okay? It just big, it's like sharp, it's salty, it's aromatic, it's funky, it's like you can taste it almost when you just smell it. Pleasantly offensive. I love it. It's so good. This, I kind of, to be honest, two things come to me when I smell this. Three things. Like Chianti red wine, like just like screams at me. Sangiovese, like just like a big, bold, fruity red wine. Or pasta. I want to grate this on pasta. I just want a big bowl of pasta and I want to grate this on it. And last, it reminds me of Tuscany. I've been to Tuscany many times making cheese, and like it just kind of has that very distinct terroir smell. Like unlike a lot of cheese made in other parts of the world, Tuscany's got something very special about it. So this is a super, super fine rind, which I'm just cutting off. And you know, we have five, I have 5 cheeses here. It's about showing them respect. I like to cut them differently. I like to plate them a little differently. I'm cutting them into triangles. Yeah, Alex, let's get down and dirty here. I'm just cutting it into nice kind of, I don't know, when I think of pecorino, I want to cut it into triangles. I don't know why. I'm like an architect of cheese and just kind of build something nice. Cheese is going to taste amazing. Let's make it look amazing as well. We all eat with our eyes, okay? So this is 12 months old. You can get many different styles of pecorino, as I mentioned. You can get wine washed ones. You can get ones coated in honey. You can get ones coated in hay, and so on and so on. This is 12 months. It's a long time for a pecorino. That's where that kind of flavor comes from. You try this cheese, you can feel it in your cheek buds. Go out and get yourself a wicked pecorino. Eat it with a big, bold red wine. Like big, bold red wine. I have California Zinfandel. That's going to work, okay? If you have a Brunello, okay, Brunello, Tuscan, a super Tuscan wine with this cheese is another amazing wine and cheese pairing. We have our first question.
Personal question to you.
Oh my God, yes.
Cheese before or after the meal?
Oh, that's such a good question. It depends. I'll tell you something very cool, okay? It's a great question. It depends where you are in the world, okay? I'm gonna give you an example, okay? The Greeks, feta is the first thing they'll consume in their bodies before water, before coffee, before tea. The Greeks will eat feta, God bless them, in the morning. Italians have big lunches. They don't eat big breakfasts. They don't eat big dinners. Italians have big lunch. They'll have a wedge of cheese bigger than this, okay? A family of 10, a wedge of cheese like this on the table, just picking at it during lunch with their pizza, pasta, vegetables, all that stuff. Italians eat cheese kind of as a digestive. So Italians eat cheese so they can eat more food. It's amazing. It's genius. The French, the English have their cheese when they have that leftover red wine from their main course at dinner. When you have that big red wine, Zinfandel, Brunello, we're talking all these amazing grape varietals. When you have that leftover at dinner, that's when you want some cheese, right? Like this, I said it, I need cheese with wine. I need wine with cheese, I do. I think the French and the English really have mastered the cheese course after dinner. With all that said, it's a long way to answer your question, but for me, I'm gonna reluctantly say after dinner. It's very hard to choose, but I'm gonna say after dinner. I kind of I love red wine, right? And I love just having it left over, and whatever it is, I just kind of pair some cheese with it. So I'm going to say after dinner. But remember what I said, it's very interesting on what different cultures, how they consume cheese and when. It was a great question. Great question. Okay, Tuscan Pecorino, beautiful Brunello, like big, bold red wine. Here's another analogy, okay? It's a boxing analogy I came up with. Cheese and wine, okay? It's like boxing. Stop, Alex is acting silly, he's bothering me. When you box, okay, there's a heavyweight boxer fights a heavyweight boxer. It has to be the case, okay? A 250-pound boxer fights a 250-pound boxer. What if a 250-pound boxer fought a 150-pound boxer? I mean, unless that 150-pound boxer is Manny Pacquiao, that big guy is really going to stomp on that smaller boxer. Think of cheese like boxing. A heavyweight cheese pairs with a heavyweight wine. You don't pair a heavyweight wine with a lightweight cheese. If I had this Zinfandel with the triple cream. Look, it's not gonna ruin your palate. It's not gonna like insult you, but I'll tell you what it won't do. It won't be a great pairing. And what is a great pairing? A great pairing is when a cheese and a wine, 1 + 1 = 3. When you get that beautiful cheese, that goat cheese we had, with that beautiful Sauvignon Blanc, and the two become something else after, it's very interesting. Boxing, you want to have a lightweight with a lightweight, a heavyweight with a heavyweight. In terms of intensity, boldness, that's what you want to do when you're pairing wine and cheese. I'm generalizing, of course, but it's just kind of a nice kind of rule of thumb I like to have and tell people that it's an easy way to kind of think or to start off. It's an easy way to kind of have a starting off point when you're pairing wine and cheese. Okay, we're going to continue. We're going to go to Holland. We were in Tuscany, we were in Ontario. We're going to go to Holland. So it's good. It's aged gouda. It's an aged gouda. And this is a very, very particular gouda. It's called Twilight Gouda. So this is made at the Van de Steer Group, one of the most renowned dairies in all of Holland. I trained making cheese there for about a year of my life, 6 months to a year. And it's kind of interesting in Holland because they do 1 or 2 styles of cheese really well. They don't do a lot of creamy stuff. They don't do a lot of blue cheese. They're not like the French. The French do kind of every cheese very well. Italians as well. But the Dutch, the firm cheese they do, the aged goudas, the Beemsters, which I'm sure you all have had, that's what they do well. And in my opinion, nobody touches them. This is along those lines. So this is actually a cheese I developed a recipe to. It's called Twilight. So I developed a recipe with the cheesemaker at the Van de Steer Group in Holland in my mid-20s. And I took the best of both worlds, Gouda and Beemster, the 2 biggest cheese schools in Holland. I took the best of both and created this kind of hybrid of cheese called Twilight. The moisture is very high. It's aged about 18 months. It's nutty, it's sharp, it's fully developed. It's, in my opinion, world-class. Really, really cool stuff. I'm gonna get up close and personal. You see those little white dots on the cheese there? See that? Some are big, some are smaller. None look the same. I think, my God, I don't know. I just read the chat. Wine and cheese after dinner extends the conversation. Dessert ends it. Oh, man, I don't know whomever said that. Tap yourself on the back. I'm gonna steal that line because dessert sucks. Come on, let's all be real. Chocolate and fruit. Who cares? Cheese. Well said. Put a heart emoji or something, Alex. It's very good. Very well done. Anyway, I'm thrown off course now. That was so good. Very well said. Okay, back to the cheese. Back to those little white specks. You see that? Some are big, some are smaller. People think that's salt. You see it. It's very, very common in cheese. In aged cheeses, aged Goudas, Parmigiano Reggiano, aged cheddars, no matter where they are, this happens naturally in a cheese as it ages. What is it? People think it's salt. It's not salt. This is essentially calcium. So these are the amino acids in the protein of the milk. As a cheese ages, years I'm talking, 1, 2, 3, 4, multiple years. As a cheese ages, the amino acids form and crystallize into those little pockets. But I love those pockets. The Italians call it grana. In English, we call it grainy. We have to ruin everything in English, by the way. But it's really, really cool because it gives the cheese texture. And what's very kind of impressive about this cheese is, and when you get an aged Gouda or an aged Beemster, no matter where it is, made in California, made in Holland, made in Ontario, wherever, a Gouda, because the moisture and the milk fat's so high in the cheese, and it's aged so long, it's interesting because it feels youthful on your palate. Feels, the texture is like almost creamy. But those little crunchy bits just give it texture. It's very, very cool. And then it feels creamy, but it tastes old. That's when this is the Dutch, the Dutch, the engineering, right? They're the best engineers in the world. Well, they've clearly engineered the heck out of a cheese like this because it's very, very special. Aged about 18 months. When you're going to buy your goudas, splurge a little bit, right? Like splurge a little bit on cheese in general, okay? You deserve it, okay? I don't know most of you, but you probably deserve it. I'm gonna be bold and say that. Splurge on cheese. It's a joy, right? Like cheese is a tasty, tasty food. Spend a couple extra bucks. You don't need to get massive pieces. You don't. Go more frequently to your cheesemonger, grocery store, whatever it is you buy your cheese, and just buy smaller pieces and expand kind of what you like. Go talk to your trusty cheesemonger, as we discussed, and just tell them what you like. Tell them what you don't like. That's important too. Splurge on cheese. Splurge on an aged gouda. Okay, I like cutting this a very particular way. So this is like it's a big wheel, right? This is like a 40th of a wheel, but I like keeping the rind on. And you can do this. I'm gonna prove it. You can do it. I bought this knife at IKEA. Okay, you can do it rustic chunks. Just cheese is made with two hands. You know, we don't have to perfectly cube our cheese. Life isn't a perfect cube, everybody. I like to just make rustic chunks like this. All right, for two reasons. I think this looks beautiful, actually. I think rustic chunks like that look fantastic. They have life that makes it feel organic. And then this guy here. So there's still quite a bit of cheese on here. This is called a cheese heel in the business. You want to keep this cheese heel. You want to put this into your tomato sauce. You want to put it in a soup, in a stock. There is so much flavor on this thing. The warmth of your tomato sauce will extract all the cheese flavor from this rind, and it will flavor and naturally season your sauce. It's wicked. Another good thing to do with this, you freeze this, you give it to your dog. Believe me, your dog will love you, and they'll let you be for like an hour and a half. Unless you have a monster like I do, and it's gone in 3 seconds. But anyway, cheese heels, everybody. I take this again. I take all my beautiful rustic chunks of cheese, and I just kind of cradle it back in here. It's a topic. It's a discussion starter, is the cheese heel. People are gonna be like, oh, wow, that looks cool. That looks fun. And then you tell them the whole cheese heel story. Oh yeah, you don't keep your cheese heels? Come on, that's the cool thing to do. There you go. I think it looks beautiful. It's pretty. It shows the integrity of the cheese and the rind and what it looked like at its birth. So important. And then you can tell the story of putting the cheese heel in the soup, stock, sauce, whatever you like. A wine to pair with a cheese like this. It's a big, bold, really complex cheese, actually. The most different we've had. I have 6 cheeses or 6 wines lined up here. It's actually really interesting. You could go one of different ways. Something big, bold, nutty. I had that Zinfandel. Okay, I'm about to have some wine. I haven't had any, and it's been a heck of a day. This is a Pinot Noir. I don't know how much a Pinot Noir is going to work in terms of intensity. I don't think it's enough, actually. But you got to try to taste it. I don't think it has the strength. This cheese, aged goudas, typically are salted butterscotch on the palate, nutty, like toasted nuts, a lot of salt. It's got a really interesting creaminess. It's just very complex and it hits a lot of different flavor profiles on your palate. So with a wine, you can go one of two ways. Either really crisp, like sharp, like dry Riesling, actually. Cold, like ice cold Riesling, but a dry, not off, just a dry Riesling. That will do it because it's got the tannins, it's got the crispness to kind of cut through the richness of it, and it's pretty well intense. This is like a medium-bodied cheese. So a Riesling, a dry Riesling, is like a medium-bodied wine. Or you can go to something bigger, bolder, sharper, red, which is definitely going to work too, because again, the cheese is pretty big, bold, and intense. Maybe a Zinfandel's too much, but something like oh, this is good. I didn't know I had this. A Camus 2018. I'm going to open this soon. Cabernet Sauvignon. This is going to work nicely. This has the tannins. This has the kind of the thick viscosity that's going to cut through the cheese. Medium. This is getting a bit bolder, kind of on just above medium weight and heavyweight. In the boxing world, there must be something there. I just don't know what it is. Not feather, I know that much. That would work well. It's tasty. Okay. Last but not least, some other stuff too. I mean, when you're making a cheese board, mine's looking pretty cool actually, but when you're making a cheese board, you want to go with a lot of water-based fruits. Grapes, figs, pear, apple, really good. I love those 4 fruits. I don't love figs are good too. I don't love berries. I don't love citrus because they have too much sugar. They have too much acid. A water-based fruit is great when traveling through cheeses. It cleans up your palate so you can keep eating more cheese. There's a question.
Pairing wine with smoked gouda or gouda.
Smoke's very difficult. Because of the smoke, I mean, typically smoked goudas, it's a great question. Smoked goudas typically are a little bit more youthful. So they're not aged. Like this gouda is pretty old at 18 months, just over 18 months. So it's very developed. A smoked gouda, the actual cheese itself is fairly youthful, typically no more than 6 months. It's the smoke that you really kind of enjoy when you're having a smoked gouda. It's that kind of smoke flavor. Then I would go definitely with something like the Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc. You need something bigger to handle the smoke flavor of the Gouda. I don't think the Riesling idea, which I had with this Gouda, which was definitely going to work, it won't work. It's not enough. That smoke will just take over a white wine, in my opinion. I think it needs to be a bigger, bolder red for sure. Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon. I think like a Shiraz, like a jammy, like acidic, like juicy Shiraz is going to work great. Last cheese, we're going to travel. We're going back to Canada, to Quebec. This is a cheese I featured on my show because we did an episode on Quebec. There's 6 episodes of my show. Today is tonight is British Columbia. We did Greece, British Columbia, Ontario, Quebec, France, and Switzerland. 6 episodes, 1 hour each. It's called Cheese, a Love Story. Cheese is romantic. To me, it is, at least. I love blue cheese. Like if people ask me what my favorite cheese is, it's very hard to say, but there's always one common kind of thing I gravitate to. I love blue cheese. I'm sure there's someone on this virtual class that says, I don't love blue cheese. This is the thing. A, nobody's perfect, okay? So it's okay. No worries. B, go to your cheesemonger. Go ask them for a milder, like a kindergarten age of blue cheese, okay? I don't know why that came out like that, but I think it makes sense. Something youthful, something young, something just mild-mannered. Kindergarten blue cheese, everybody, okay? I think you need to develop your palate. And this is the thing with blue cheese, talking about wine. Blue cheese, that's where you need wine. Because a blue cheese can rip your taste buds out in the best kind of way, but it's a big flavor. It's salty, it's aggressive, it's acidic, it's sharp. That's when you need a good wine. Question.
Expanding on the wine. So when you express heavyweight, do you mean full bodied?
Yes.
Or
yes.
heavy tannins?
I mean, full bodied and heavy tannins can kind of cross paths. So I would say, to answer your question, it's a very good one. Full body, okay? A heavyweight wine is going to be a full-bodied red wine, okay? Whether it's smaller tannins, bigger tannins, I think it's good to talk about the intensity of the actual wine overall, not just the tannins. So a heavyweight wine, for me, equates to a full, bold red wine. Very good question. To the blue. For me, another great pairing is ice wine with blue. This is a Cabernet Franc red ice wine from Niagara at Stratus Winery, 2006. This is old. This is nice. I didn't know I had this. Slightly chilled, not like ice cold, slightly chilled with blue cheese. This is sweet. You need, in my opinion, two ways. Again, you need something sweet to go with blue cheese because it's so salty, whether it's an ice wine, whether it's port, whether it's a sherry, whether it's Banyuls from France, like those fortified wines, which are sweet, high in alcohol, go really, really well with blue cheese. Definitely, like port and blue. Port and Stilton, like this is very Stilton-esque. Port and Stilton is, again, like I talked about Sauvignon Blanc and goat cheese being an amazing wine and cheese pairing. So is Port and Stilton. Amazing, iconic, epic, okay? But ice wine is too. I think something really, really sweet, like an ice wine. Then again, it's a heavyweight cheese, a heavyweight wine, something bold. The Camus I had, I think is gonna work. Something, even the Zinfandel, which is, like rich and like almost like bloody in the best kind of way. The blue needs some sort of like big, bold intensity flavor of a red wine. Yes, another question.
Can we interject with a Chardonnay, which you haven't represented today?
You know what? I think I have one here too. I do. The Chardonnay with the blue cheese, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. A Chardonnay with some of the milder cheeses, with the triple cream goat cheese, definitely. Especially if it's a drier Chardonnay, I think definitely the goat's milk cheese, beautiful combination. If it's kind of like an off-dry, like more buttery Chardonnay, you want like a little bit more buttery of a cheese, it's going to work perfectly. I only have so much room for wine. Yes, more questions. Here we go.
Step it right back to remind what the pairing was with the Pecorino.
The pairing I did with the Pecorino, I did the Cab Franc. So I did a Cab Franc, Brunello as well. If you have a Brunello, open that up. Sangiovese grape. So a bigger, bolder wine, not too big, but I think a Cab Franc is going to work perfectly. Again, in terms of intensity, I think the cheese is like a 6 out of 10. You want to kind of aim your wine like that too. I think Cab Franc is going to work great. Definitely more on the red side with the Pecorino. The Pecorino has cheese tannins, I like to call, where it just kind of gets you in your cheek buds. I don't think a white wine is dry enough, big enough, bold enough. Definitely a red wine. And again, it's Tuscan, like Tuscany, amazing, super Tuscan, like bolder red wines work beautifully. The blue cheese. I love blue cheese. I'm not going to cut it. I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm just going to put it down. This is Bleu d'Elizabeth, all organically farmed from Quebec. It's kind of interesting because it's almost like creamy and crumbly at the same time. I mean, it's crumbly in texture. Like I could crumble this easily on salad even. But once it hits the warmth of your palate, it just becomes like creamy and it just kind of melts away. It's amazing. And again, like in terms of wine pairing, like ice wine. I love Banyuls. I don't know if you guys have ever had Banyuls. It's a fortified wine from France. I love it. Sherry, port wine, all amazing wines. Fortified, high alcohol. High alcohol also can like compensate for a lot of the salt and like richness and tanginess and sharpness in a cheese. Maybe you want to have a scotch with it. I know this is wine and cheese, but I'm telling you, a scotch, a good like smoky, smooth scotch with a touch of ice maybe, with the blue cheese at the end of the meal, at the end of the meal, after the red wine, a good scotch would go perfectly with that blue cheese. Just saying. That's everything. I also had like crackers and like, look, for me, it's about wine and cheese. Everything else is, training wheels, I like to call. 100%, I think we need a vessel of some sort. A tomato jam works amazing. A fig spread, a honey, honestly, anything you like. I think the most important thing with food, wine and cheese, look, I'm guiding you into what I feel works, okay? I've done nothing in my life other than eat wine and cheese, frankly. It's actually my job to do that. But there's no right or wrong answer. I don't think a Chardonnay is going to go well with the blue cheese. But if there's someone there who has a Chardonnay and has had it with the blue cheese and think it's fantastic pairing, that's amazing. Good for you. Nobody should tell you that that's not going to work. You can't do that. I don't like when there's hard, fast rules with food. I hate it, actually. There should be no pretension. My palate is no better than anyone else's on this virtual class. It's simply a little bit more trained because this is what I do for a living. But I think the best part about doing a wine and cheese pairing is also experimenting. I think that's kind of fun because your palate may discover a better pairing or a different pairing than I discover a different pairing. Yes, there's a question.
Let's answer this now and sidestep to a grilled cheese sandwich. What cheese do you like in the sandwich, and what wine would you recommend with that sandwich?
Well, I think the wine depends on the cheese. And for a grilled cheese sandwich, I think the most important thing is the meltability on the cheese. The cheese has to melt well. Gruyere, cheddar, I think work amazing. A brie like this, when left out at room temperature, that's another good thing, another trick about cheese. Can you get her water? Sorry. My dog wants water, I'm sorry. So another good thing about a grilled cheese, or tips, leave your cheese out at room temperature. Leave your cheese out at room temperature an hour, 2 hours. This will help the cheese melt evenly. So sometimes if you have a cheese chilled, you put it in your bread and you start like basting, or like you put the butter and you start getting it on the pan, the bread starts kind of getting that nice caramelization and that nice kind of golden brown before the cheese is melted. It's the worst thing because then the bread burns before the cheese melts. Terrible. Leave the cheese out at room temperature. I love Gruyere and cheddars. I love both of them, frankly. I love the nuttiness and meltability of a Gruyere sliced thin with like the sharpness and acidity of a cheddar. The two of them in a grilled cheese sandwich, amazing. If that was the case, a red wine. It's a great question. I never was asked that question before. I think then I'd go with like a white of some sort. I love Riesling. I love Riesling. I think like if I'm going to a cheese party and you're bringing one wine, go with Riesling. Riesling is acid and like crisp and like just can hit so many different flavor profiles. I'm going with the Riesling with Gruyere and aged cheddar and a grilled cheese sandwich. Fantastic question.
2 questions. I'm going to just step back from wine and ask, cheese at room temperature before serving, how long?
I touched on it earlier. Honestly, I've had this out for 6 hours. Yes, my kitchen smells like goat cheese, but this is how I want to consume that goat cheese. Look, if you don't honestly, I'm not kidding you. 6 hours, especially for creamier cheeses. When you have a good wine, you want it to open up and let the air hit it a little bit. Not if the wine's like aged, but when you have like a nice wine and it's prime, you need it to sit out at room temp and open up. Cheese is the same thing. You want firm, creamy. You want cheeses to sit at room temp minimum 2 hours. Minimum 2 hours. You're doing the cheese justice. Again, there's no rules, but you're doing the cheese justice. You're respecting it when you leave it out at room temp for 2 hours before you consume it. It's important for the cheese. There's another question.
Manchego. We haven't talked about Spanish wines.
Manchego. Okay, well, we talked about Italian pecorino, pecora. Manchego is, the pecorino of Spain. So Manchego is sheep's milk cheese. You can get it, very iconic cheese in Spain, one of my favorites. You can get it in a lot of different ages, 3-month to 12-month, even older sometimes. So I would kind of go with the same recommendation on wine. I mean, if you're going to Manchego, though, I think a Rioja, like a not crazy aged Rioja, a little bit more youthful, because Riojas can be quite bold already. But, a 3 or 4-year-old Rioja with like a mid-aged Manchego, because Manchego is going to have a similar flavor profile, like the Pecorino Toscana, like the Tuscan Pecorino? Great question. Manchego Rioja is, peanut butter and jelly. Any other question? That was it. I mean, yeah, there we go. I went through all the cheeses, went through all the wines I had. I think I kind of paired them nice. There's another question. Here we go, guys. Questions. Do it.
Best way to wrap cheese when you bring it home?
Ah, such a good question. I love that question. Here's what not to do. Don't put a bag. Don't use a Ziploc bag. Here's an example. I come home today from work and my lovely wife, God bless her, does this. Puts a piece of Parmigiano Reggiano in a Ziploc bag. I love her. I really, really do. But, she's married to the cheese master. She's like the first lady of fromage, and she's making a big faux pas. You can see what's happening. This is what not to do. This is like putting a bag over your head, people. What's going to happen to you? Don't do that to the cheese. Look at this. Do you see the moisture collecting? Look at that. Okay? That's not good. This is one day. That moisture is collecting in the bag. That cheese, because the cheese emits moisture naturally. That's what's going to happen in your fridge. This cheese is going to sit in its own sweat, sit in its own moisture. It's going to get all like wet and funky, and it's not right. It's not good. Don't put a bag over your head, people. The best thing, 2 layers, wax paper or parchment paper. Okay, let's go with parchment paper. Okay, you cover the cheese, and tin foil on top of that. 2 layers of protection is the best for cheese in general. I'm generalizing because every cheese can be slightly different, but parchment paper and tin foil. The parchment paper lets the cheese breathe. The cheese needs to breathe in your fridge. Excuse me. The tin foil doesn't let the cheese flavor just kind of get out of the cheese and into the rest of your fridge, and vice versa. So the cheese doesn't take the fridge flavor from everything else in your fridge. 2 layers of protection, parchment paper and tin foil. No Ziploc bags. That's the one rule I have for tonight. Yes.
Your pedigree. How did you become a cheese master?
How did I become a cheese master? I'm the youngest cheese master in the world. So what a master sommelier is to wine, a cheese master is to cheese. There's, I think, 190 or 200 master sommeliers in the world, maybe a few more now. There's 50-ish or so cheese masters in the world. I was the youngest to ever receive it when I was 33. I'm 41 now. I call it the school of hard knocks. I've worked and trained with the best cheesemakers on the planet. I'm very fortunate enough to have done that. I also learned from my father, who is one of the best in Canada and a cheese pioneer in this country. I'm very blessed to have worked with them. Literally, that's what it was. When I started doing this, there was no such thing as a cheese school. There was no collegiate level that you can get a cheese certification program. Now you can. You can go to Vermont. You can go to San Francisco. In Toronto, at George Brown College in Toronto, I wrote the program with my father actually about 10 years ago. But back in the day, I call it the School of Hard Knocks. It's through experience. And I got recognized from the French government, and the French are crazy about cheese in the best kind of way. Yeah, that's kind of it. 25 years it took me.
The perfect fondue blend. I think I know this answer.
The perfect fondue blend. I'm Swiss trained. So the first place I ever went to in Europe to make cheese was in Switzerland. I go with a third, equal parts. This recipe is on Google. If you Google my first and last name and fondue recipe, it'll come up. There you go. But to answer your question, Gruyere, 33%, a youthful Gruyere, okay, about 6 months. Emmental, young as well, about 6 months. So 33% Gruyere, 33% Emmental, and the kicker and this kind of the secret ingredient, and this is where the funk comes from, is Vacherin Fribourgeois. That's like the funky, like washed rind, like aromatic Swiss cheese. meltability is amazing, but it gives the cheese the funk. The Emmental and the Gruyere give it that ooey gooey stringy texture. 33% Vacherin Free Bourgeois, 33% Gruyere, 33% Emmental. And a bit of kirsch and garlic and fresh thyme, black pepper. You only need flour if you screw up, and a little bit of white wine. Yes.
Vidal or Gertz, where would you fit that in?
Gewürztraminer or Gruner Veltliner, or both. I think it's Gewürztraminer. So Alsace wine, or made in other parts of the world too. That's a funky wine. It's almost like a white wine. It tastes like a fruity red wine. It's really, really interesting. You see it big in Alsace and different parts of France and Germany and Austria as well. Washed rind cheeses. So like, it's a funky wine, so you want a funky cheese. So not like the brie I gave, or I suggested. This is too mild. You want something with like funk aromatics, smells like your gym bag, Munster, Époisse, Reblochon, those like funky wash rind cheeses is perfect for a Gewürztraminer. Another question.
Favorite cheese for a cheesecake? Two-parter?
Oh,
layered, actual cheesecake?
No,
Where do you want to go?
A cheesecake. To kind of think outside the box. Look, I think cream cheese is a classic cheese for a cheesecake. I like a goat cheese, okay? But let's take this goat cheese, for example. And I mentioned it's kind of 3 goat cheeses in one. I'm talking like the center, like the classic texture for goat cheese is amazing in a cream cheese because it adds like it's got a zip to it. Goat cheese like this, and you can whip it a little bit. Whip it with a little bit of cream. Hey, behave. Here, she wants cheese. Here you go. Okay, whip the goat cheese a little bit with some cream, just to give it the texture you need for your cheesecake. But then it's going to add like a really cool sourness. Excuse me, a really cool sourness, acidity. I say goat cheese. That's a very good question. Cream cheese or cheesecake. You know what else works too is feta. Believe it or not, feta. The Greeks invented cheesecake. They fed it to the Olympians way back when, thousands of years ago. Feta works really well in a cheesecake too. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? That is it. I hope you guys enjoyed. I love cheese. Honestly, I love it. It gave me everything. For me, it's not just a beautiful food, but it's a little piece of art. Every cheese is unique. I think wine is the same thing. I honestly believe, and I say this without any bias, I don't say this as a cheese or wine expert. I say this as a wine and cheese lover. I think the best pairing in the world, food pairing and alcohol pairing, is wine and cheese. They live a similar life. When you're pairing them, remember that equation. 1 + 1 should equal 3. You want the two to taste like 1 after. It's very, very special. Get to that point. Have fun experimenting as well. I think it's really, really important. There's no hard, fast rules. Remember what I said. I think it's really, really important. Nobody can tell you what you like. Nobody can. You tell yourself what you like, what you don't like. And there's no wrong answer. It's very important. I'm going to end with, I'm very excited. This is Palm Desert Food and Wine, the virtual series. This is the first one. I don't know if it goes downhill from here or uphill from here. I'll let y'all figure that out. But it's a really, really cool group to be with. I'm very excited for next March, for next year. I've been trying to get down to the Palm Desert Food and Wine for years now. For obvious reasons, we couldn't have it happen, but I'm very excited. I'm very excited. I can't wait. I love California. And tickets go on sale August 1st. And this is like the tip of the iceberg. When I get down there, I'm going to get down and dirty with some wine and cheese and food. I'm going to cook. It's going to be wonderful. But there's like a superstar group of chefs coming down there. You guys want to come. August 1st, tickets go on sale. Google it. You can find all the information. That's it, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed. Hope you all enjoyed. Respect the cheese. Respect the wine. Have a great night, everybody.